like to welcome Jane Secker this morning, who's here to talk to us about using social media in research. Jane has come up from London. She's the Copyright and Digital Literacy Advisor at the LSE. She provides workshops and support for staff, students and researchers, and she's also chair of the SILIP Information Literacy Group. She's the author of several books. Her most recent one is coming out this summer and is entitled Copyright and E-Learning, a Guide for Practitioners, and I'm sure we will be buying a copy for ILS. Jane's research is quite varied. She's got a PhD from Aberystwyth University. She focuses on digital and information literacy, on copyright education and the role of technologies in supporting learning. And she held in 2011 a research fellowship at Wilson College, Cambridge. So, Jane.
Okay, thank you very much, Vic. Can everyone hear me? Okay, yeah? The people in the far reaches over there? Okay, thank you. Thanks. I'm going to talk to you about some of the tools, the social media tools that I use in my research and share some ideas. But just to sort of say before we start that this workshop you probably will have to move around, because what I want to do really is get people talking in groups about the things that you're using at the moment, because I think that I'm sure as researchers that we're all using lots of tools. There's just so much technology out there. Not one person, I can't stand here and say, well, I'm going to tell you everything there is to know about using social media with research. I'm sure I'm going to learn lots of things as well this morning. But I think what I was thinking when I was preparing for today, because I tend to talk really about using social media and using technology in teaching, and I've used a lot of social media myself as a researcher, particularly in the last sort of 5 to 10 years. And I guess I was sort of reflecting on when I did my PhD back in the mid-90s, on how I did that work, which was, as Vic said, I was based at Aberystwyth in West Wales. I was quite remote and cut off from the world, as anyone who's been to Aberystwyth will testify. The train journey just from Shrewsbury is about 2.5 hours. And so when I wanted to sort of talk to other people, I was quite limited in the people that I could actually reach. I had to talk to the people mainly that were at Aberystwyth with me, unless I was going to travel, which as a PhD student, obviously your budget tends to be quite limited. So I did a lot of kind of talking to other research students, but I talked to people who were not necessarily doing research on the same topic as me, because I would discover that they would be, you know, the other side of the world, and it would be really hard for me to reach them. And then I was kind of thinking, you know, sort of 20 years later or so, you know, how we can do research now with people the other side of the world. So at the moment I'm working on a collaborative project around copyright education, which is a multinational study. There's been over 15 countries involved. I'm working with researchers who are based all around the world, in the States, in various countries around in Europe. And you know, through technology, we can collaborate. We've got an online survey tool we're using. We can share documents with each other. Similarly, I'm working on a project with a group of researchers, mainly based in the US, who are looking to write a paper together. And so we're using Google Docs, we're using Skype, we're using a tool called Trello as well for kind of task management. And I think that how we work now is really quite different as a researcher to how you would have worked, you know, 20 years ago. So some of what I'm going to talk about is really kind of, say, based on my experience. I'm doing a lot of research at the moment with a colleague who's based at the University of Kent. Now, it's only 50-60 miles away, but actually that's still quite a distance. And I reflect on the fact that I just couldn't do the research I'm doing today 20 years ago without technology to kind of connect me. So hopefully as I say, some of the insights I'll share are really kind of based on things I do as a researcher, and you might find it useful. But I think what would be just really helpful is, because I know we've got quite a diverse audience here, is just for everybody to just maybe really briefly introduce themselves, just so I can get a sense of who you are, you know, whether you're a PhD student, and kind of, you know, where you are in terms of, are you using social media, you know, a lot, or, you know, have you come here to kind of have your eyes open to seeing what you're doing? So is that okay if we just go around really quickly, because I think it would just really help me get a sense of who's in the room, yeah? And can we maybe just start at this end of the room, is that all right? Right, that's really helpful for me. I was sort of also thinking, so we're kind of all using this term social media, and kind of what actually are we really talking about? And I was sort of looking at I've sort of been working and did some research in this field probably, well, around the time that Twitter was launched, so around 2006, 2007, and we used to call it Web 2.0 then. Does anyone remember that term? Yeah, and you sort of have to spend a lot of time explaining to people, what is this Web 2.0? And I think when I started thinking about, well, what is social media now? You know, and at the time there was all this kind of buzz for having all these tag clouds of, you know, well, so it's all about sharing, it's all about collaboration, it's all about online, you know, it's kind of the tools we use. But I think, to be honest, rather than kind of, I think we do all know what we're talking about. We're talking about tools that we use, like Twitter, we're talking about Facebook, so we're talking about some social networking tools, but we're also talking about tools that allow us to sort of share resources with other people as well. There might be things like the site, you know, YouTube or Flickr for photos, but it might also be something like Pinterest. And I kind of think now, well, is it all about apps? Is that what we're talking about? Because I think you used to be talking about social media as this kind of way of interacting with the web. And I think a lot of the time now, a lot of these tools that people are using, they're probably also using them, you know, they're using them on a mobile device. It might be an iPad, it might be their phone as well. So I don't think it is all about apps, definitely, because I think there's plenty of apps that are out there that are not social media, but I think terminology is kind of a really tricky one at the moment, and I suppose what I'm really talking about are tools or technologies, services that are out there that might be helpful for you as a way of collaborating, sharing, collecting together information, and kind of using that in whatever it is that you're trying to do. Because I think for me, despite the fact I've worked in educational technology for a really long time, I do really like to try to sort of say I'm not just a technology for technology's sake person. It's really about, well, what is somebody actually trying to do, and is there a way that we could do this better, which might be technology, but it might not be, you know. And I say one of the activities I want you to do is actually just involves pen and paper, because I find in the program that I run for students at LSE around using social media, using technology, that a lot of the time they're not, you know, it's just easier to express what you want to do on a piece of paper with a pen sometimes. But in terms of, obviously, if you want to communicate with somebody the other side of the world, you know, there is no other tool than, you know, something like Twitter, where you can just ask a question and you can have a response from somebody, you know, within seconds to your question, who is just miles away from you. And you know, we'll talk a bit about Twitter in this session, but, you know, through using hashtags and through following people, I have conversations daily with, you know, with people who are based, you know, on the other side of the world, and it's just something that I wouldn't be able to do with technology. And I think it's a way of kind of, you know, being able to really develop areas of interest in a new way that would have, you know, you could have happened in the past when you went to a conference and you met people and you sent them an email, but I think Twitter has changed that a little bit. I'm also happy to be interrupted as well, so if you want to sort of shout out and say something, then please do. We also, I think I think that, as I say, I'm really interested in what things like social media do around boundaries between the personal and the professional. And so I think for this first discussion, I'd be really interested in sort of hearing what people think about that, because I find when I talk to colleagues at LSE that's one of the things where people will sort of say, well, you know, there are certain spaces like Facebook that they think are very personal and private, and there are other spaces where they feel more professional, and there are some spaces where they're not quite sure how they feel. So Twitter being one of them that I think I sometimes wonder, you know, I have quite a lot of friends on Twitter, but I generally would say I use it quite professionally. So this would just be quite useful. I know people have given a little insight, but in groups I'd quite like you to just have 5 minutes to discuss, and I'm wondering if I could break up the librarians at the back there. Because I'd quite like you to talk to some of your academic colleagues. So I don't know if you could talk this group here, and then the 4 of you there, so that you're talking not because I think it will be interesting to have that mix. Can I call you back? It's just a little warm up. We want to just carry on talking to each other, so I Can I call you back? I know you haven't had long, but you're going to have more time to talk about stuff and share ideas as well in this session, hopefully. Can we just go around each of the groups really quickly and just hear a little bit? So I kind of asked quite a lot of questions, I'm aware, and we haven't got a lot of time. If we start with this group, is there anything, what kind of came out of what you were talking about? Were you focusing on all the questions, talking about personal, professional?
A few of us who use kind of Facebook personally, Twitter professionally.
Okay, so Facebook is a tool that people were using in that group personally, but Twitter professionally.
Yeah.
Okay.
We seem to focus on those two. Obviously, I think there's a tendency to focus on Twitter and Facebook when you're talking about social media. Obviously, there are a lot more things available. But and we have a skeptic among us.
Okay. That's good. It's good to have
a skeptic who can see some advantages with this.
Okay.
I mean, we flag up in our research student induction things like hashtag PhD chat.
Yes.
As a great way for researchers to find people in niche areas elsewhere in the globe.
Yeah.
And I think it's a real advantage here. But my real scepticism is I think it's sort of a bit lightweight, and I was slightly sceptical of what you were saying earlier about how wonderful it is for international communication, because I think email actually, people think a little bit more about what they put into an email, and heavyweight academic communication, that's probably still a better medium.
Okay, so is email better for kind of more formal sort of, you know, if you're approaching,
Would you talk a little bit about how Twitter opposed to email can break down barriers? So on Twitter you can get access to people where you wouldn't be able to email them directly. So
breaking down barriers, okay, great. And because of the informality, so so it's a kind of, it's like two sides of the same coin. Okay, great. I'll move on to another group, I think. Should we take the group that was here, that Claire was in?
But it was a mix of skeptics and lots of users. ResearchGate was mentioned as a way of sharing research and making connections with people.
As a professional, everyone's heard of ResearchGate, yeah? Okay, I've got 2 pens I've got to go between, I've realised. I've got a flip top, a pen and, ResearchGate. Yeah.
Again, a few people had the Facebook versus Twitter personal professional, although mine is merged, as anyone who's seen me ranting about dancing.
Claire! Okay, I'll put Claire in a minute. I think that is true, that there are more people that are kind of using Twitter in that slightly blended way, because they're like a person as well as just about their research.
Twitter hashtags the conferences as a way of interacting with people at conferences.
I'll put that as an advantage.
Yeah.
I'll put that on this one. Okay, so conference. And extending the kind of discussion
Yeah.
outside the conference, you mean? So you can follow an event remotely, yeah.
And then Trello was mentioned as well, and working with students on a publishing project and being able to see what's going on.
Okay, I'm gonna talk about Trello, or a tool that's very similar to it as a professional tool. Should we put that on here? Okay.
It was also mentioned there that sometimes it's quite hard to get students to use things that they're not, the tools they're already using, the ones they like
Yeah.
to use, they're a bit hesitant to use new tools.
Yes. Okay. I don't know where I'm going to put that. How to here under a reservations, maybe.
Yeah, I suppose that's what the teachers.
It's more. Yeah.
For anyone, that they have their kind of safe spaces and they have their biases already, and it's hard to get them to adopt a new.
I'm gonna put it under a reservation, but I'm not quite sure where it fits. But I think it is about that people have the kind of tools they are familiar with. Yeah. Okay. Certainly, I found the same with students that they've got stuff that they already use, and so, well, why do I need something else? And and getting them to sort of stop taking notes just in Word and saving them locally on their computer and think about something that might work collaboratively. It's well, why try and fix something that for them isn't broken? Okay, thank you, your group. What about the other group?
We had a similar experiences, and the personal Facebook and maybe more professional Twitter, and also another split between professional and personal Twitter.
Okay.
Not only for the reason.
So Twitter could go in both categories.
Not only for the reason
Yeah.
that you might want to separate them off, but you have to be probably this kind of anxiety about what you write on Twitter because it's technically publishing.
Yeah.
So whatever your views on what you should be able to put out there, not everybody has the same idea. So I think there is kind of, that's more prevalent now, that there are different kind of personal and professional Twitters for one person.
So are you somebody who has two accounts, or?
I have one account, but
Yeah.
I am conscious that you
Yeah.
can't maybe write in the same way on Twitter as you would on a closed.
Yeah, I blended mine for a while and then decided actually no, it's going to be entirely a professional account and got rid of, I essentially scrapped everything before a certain date and then treated it just like a professional one.
Yeah.
Because there is the ability that, it's just out there, anybody can look at it and record it, and it's that residue of what's online.
Yeah. No, certainly I know of people who do have two accounts to do that as well, so that they can sort of be one person, professionally, and then if they want to do something that's not associated with them, if you were to search for them professionally.
Yeah.
So, and that might be also, so I think, were you the musician? And I know that some people have different interests, that they might say, well, I'm going to go on Twitter to look for stuff for my kind of more, academic interests, but actually outside of work, I'm an artist or a musician, and I want to have a kind of identity separate to that. Okay, yes?
One of my reservations about it would be the potential of an indiscreet tweet or something to actually be a career editor. And you think back to that guy in Nottingham a year or two back that said some very indiscreet things about students.
Yeah.
And that was a complete career for him.
Yeah.
And one of the things we do flag up with research student doctrines is, and I appreciate it's a little bit dated now, the old research information network guide to social media. And if you get any suggestions for something more modern than that, it'd be really good to have a good source to point people in the direction for.
Yeah. Okay. I think it's a really important point though about my next slide is sort of, I know we've got one more group, but it's kind of really thinking about that whole digital identity footprint sort of thing. I think that is a really key thing around, what's out there online about us. Okay, can I hear from this group as well? Just similar discussions, anything new, any challenges?
Charlotte had some interesting ideas on how to stop Twitter being a thief of time.
Because that is an issue, isn't it? I think with all of these is about time, don't it?
I have a sort of set of lists, so I'll go and go up
now I'm going to go and look at my list, which is about my research or about academic writing or something. But it can still be, it's a lot easier to read 30 articles on academic writing than it is to write. You're supposed to be writing.
Yes, yeah.
But I found that a much more disciplined way, which has really helped.
Okay, so using lists.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, I'll put that in here.
And we had some ideas from Sanjeeva, I think, to get reactions for research.
Yeah, to interpret personal and professional works. Some people use personal accounts to achieve their professional goal.
Yeah.
Research,
Yeah.
especially critical discourse analysis. If they want to discuss about some conversations, definitely they have to go to personal accounts and grab some stuff.
Yes, yeah. And were you talking about using Facebook to do
Facebook,
research?
Yeah.
And I think you get into kind of issues as well around, which I'll talk about at the end, around ethics and kind of, you know, privacy, and when you're doing research, actually using social media, and obviously it could be really powerful as a way of collecting data. But you know, are the people that you're collecting the data from also aware that you're doing research on them?
You have to be a part of the furniture, actually, which is the society. Personal or professional way.
So do you declare that you're a researcher when you're in that space, Sanjeev? Do you kind of, you go into a group and say, I'm here, but I'm here as a researcher, or are you there?
Not as a researcher, but as a Sanjeeva.
Okay.
Go over there. Also, I have an outsider perspective as a researcher. But inside, yes, of course, just like a performing artist or dancer or friend.
Well, I certainly will. I'll touch on that, and a couple of projects that have been done at LSE around actually doing research, you know, not just about social media, but using it as a way of getting different types of data from people on opinions and things. And anything else from your group?
I think I sort of raised the factor about trying to make technology as part of the process, not as an add-on. You know, being part of the process that is, you know, natural, and trying to get more people to engage in it really, rather than just say, oh yeah, I've engaged with it, you know, done this, but it needs to be something that's fruitful and create something out of it.
I don't even know where to do that, but it's, okay, so it's sort of about embedding technology in the process. Okay, lots and lots of things. I'm quite aware that probably we could have just continued this discussion, and I have got another discussion activity in a moment which I'd like to move on to as well, because I think you've all got a lot of really great ideas. I just thought I would kind of flag up some of the issues that I thought were key, so one of the workshops that we do at LSE that we started off doing for staff, but actually is really important for students, is all about online identity, and in the middle the kind of the digital footprint. So you kind of got, you know, a positive thing of like your identity and it being all sort of enhancing, but then this idea that actually we're all leaving sort of traces around on the web that potentially we might not always be able to control. So some of the things obviously you can control are kind of where you publish and you know, putting things up on your institutional website about yourself. But in kind of moving about the web, there might also just be things. So the first activity I always do in this workshop with staff or students is pair them up and they Google each other. So they're with somebody they don't know at all and they Google the other person. Now they don't share with the whole room what they find, but they share with the other person, and then I ask them to reflect on what they felt about what's online about them. So quite a number of our students, for example, are usually very shocked actually of the types of information that is out there about them. It will depend quite a lot on their name, I have to be honest. It's something where we have students who you know, they may say, well, they couldn't find me because, you know, I've got a very common name, or they maybe have come from a country where there just isn't that much. We have lots of international students at LSE, but I think for everybody to do this is quite an important thing to do really, to sort of then to start to think about, well, where are the spaces that I can control, and then where are the spaces. A lot of students will say, oh, I'm just shutting down all these old accounts that I didn't know exist. I had one student who was really quite traumatised with what they found. They wouldn't tell me what it was. All they've ever shared is, it was a Twitter account that was set up when I was very young and I was very silly, and it now doesn't exist. But you know, I think it's just, it is something where, you know, your identity is something that most of us want to control, and increasingly we're just leaving traces around, and some of it we might not always be able to control, you know, so you just have to be kind of mindful about that, I think. What I thought I would just sort of think a bit about before you go on to the next activity is sort of the ways that you might behave as a researcher. Sorry about the text, I think is quite small. Can everybody read that okay? But the ways that you might behave when you're doing research, and then in the next activity I get you to maybe think about some of the tools that you use at the moment, and where you might be using social media or where it might be able to help, because I've tried to structure the next bit of the talk then around tools that sort of help with these different stages. So we've got kind of finding information and keeping yourself up to date. How do you do that at the moment, and are there ways? And a lot of you have been talking about Twitter, hashtags, those sorts of things. When you're actually doing research, so it will obviously depend on your topic, but you know, we'll have a think about, you know, whether there's any actual research that you might be able to do. So crowdsourcing data, you know, going to Twitter and mining that as a way of getting kind of opinion on things. Obviously, communication and networking is a really important use of social media, and so, you know, I think it's something that can just facilitate, as we've talked about, sort of talking to people who've got similar interests to you but aren't at your institution and could be anywhere in the world. And then collaboration and collaborative working, and it's something where I think the kind of real key benefits are for me as a researcher has been around kind of finding people, but also being able to work with them when they're not sat next to me somewhere, or you know, in the same institution. Obviously, in terms of, you know, thinking of your own identity, but your own research and how you showcase that. You know, we traditionally would publish our research in academic journals, but I think more and more social media gives you a sort of platform to take control of that and to maybe also have a greater impact sort of outside of academia. So, you know, obviously for many of us as a researcher, you want to be published in certain key journals. You want other researchers to read the work you're doing, but with the sort of the move with the ref to really kind of demonstrate the impact that you're having beyond academia, I think that's where social media really comes into its own. And then I think just kind of helping you evaluate what you do, maybe you know, be a bit more creative as well. I think for me, social media, some of the tools I've used have been really powerful. Okay, so I'm going to, I think if I'll get you to stay in the groups that you worked in before, and I've got some more discussions for you to have to think about how you currently do these things. But what I would suggest is that you just pick, don't do the whole list, so maybe pick one or two of those in your groups that you want to focus on. I'm going to give you a piece of paper for each group and a pen, and I thought what would be really nice is if you could kind of visually represent what it is that you do, because I think this will be a kind of process, and there might be tools that are important, there might be just kind of things that you do, like going to conferences, but try to sort of, as a group, come up with a way of illustrating that to show us what you do. Can I ask, I think, I'm conscious we've only got half an hour left, and I think we could just basically, I don't need to show you any technology at all or talk about any tools I use. You're all having such a useful discussion, I think, with each other. I think I would like to go around the room and just hear from each of the groups, because there's some really great ideas that I think are really worth sharing. I'll come to your group last if you would like, if that's all right. But yeah, can we start at the back of the room, and the group tell us which kind of aspect of the process did you focus on? I think it was sharing, wasn't it, your research? Yes?
Yes.
Do you want to hold it up as well and show people what you've done?
Okay. We were looking at
Shall I
sharing.
bring that up to the front and then everyone can see? Yeah.
So we were looking at the sharing research findings and debating about the concept
See
of
that?
once you've been generating content, whatever that content is, whether or not it's research or just academic musings or whatever else, how you actually spread that out into the world. And whether or not there's more formal ways of doing it, like repositories and Ray and things like that, or open access where you are bringing it into larger repositories, or if you're balancing out and doing some of that sharing directly yourself via either a blog or Twitter. And yeah, we debated a little bit about the balance of, you know, how much to share versus how little to share. How much are you just doing blatant promotion versus how much are you trying to share ideas and trying to get a good balance, and the hazard of if you turn into the person that tweets all the time just about, oh, by the way, if you haven't read my book, that kind of thing, that it's quite easy for people to just stop listening to you.
Yeah.
And for you to be more of a, you know, just a loud voice in a loud room. And yeah, and debating about the balancing of time between generating that content and sharing it and engaging in social media, and how much time you might be able to invest, because all of it takes time to do it properly, versus just a little thing here and there and everything else.
Yeah. But I think when I came over, you were talking quite a lot about the sort of benefits of actually doing that in terms of...
Yeah, we also spoke about, maybe countering the point that there is a danger of oversharing and maybe losing your ideas to somebody else, that it's good, particularly in an early stage, maybe a PhD, to create an online profile, because the rationale for going to academic conferences before Twitter perhaps would be that you would meet people, and that, you know, this might be useful in the future, whereas you can do this online in a number of different ways. So it gets you your name and your research out there. And actually a very easy way.
And actually having a breadth of stuff out there, which includes more formal published material as well as potentially other, you know, if you write a blog post for somebody else, or even if you have your own blog or things like that, that people get a sense of who you are as an academic and as a teacher and what things you're interested in, how you approach different areas and fields and things like that. So if you were going for that job or just coming for a conference or anything else, that people can get a really well-rounded sense of what you do.
Yeah, do you have yeah?
Just coming back to Peter's point, there's a really good example a few years ago, some brilliant research being done in forensic podiatry, one of our PhD students here, and she presented her research at a conference run by the FBI in the States. This is the sort of level she was working at. And to sort of watermark her ownership of the ideas in the research, we actually put the conference presentation into the institutional repository. As a way of sort of claiming and ensuring that we got the ideas came from York St John and from her.
So it's sort of formalising it, almost like publishing it. But
there was real concern that other people would try to pension some of this stuff.
And I think the combination of making sure that, you know, things exist in multiple places all help reinforce the idea that it is your content.
Institutional repository has got some specific advantages here, in that it's authenticated, it's very robust in terms of showing dates and all the rest of it, and it's maintained for the future. And I mean, some things other things might be lost. It's got some significant advantages, and I think we're probably not using Ray as well as we could for that at the moment.
It's a mixed picture.
I mean, Ray, it was an earlier institution of Foster had at that time. Ray's much better from that, this sort of thing then.
Can I hear from this group, because you were sharing your research findings, and I think this was actually a lot of your concerns, wasn't it, around some of the PhD students in the group. I want me to hold that up.
Yeah, so we didn't really answer your question.
You raised a lot of really interesting issues.
Yeah, so we had more of a sort of open discussion about some of the tensions around sharing your research. So what are you allowed to publish? Because we were thinking about the strategy behind your academic career and what you might want to publish in the future, and would you end up oversharing? And then that also fed into when do you share your research findings, because you don't want someone preempting your outputs in the future, and also the worry about theft of intellectual property. And we had some examples of that some of the researchers in the group had actually experienced. So there was some interesting discussions around that. Also, we had a bit of a discussion about open access, because obviously the open access agenda in the UK and in Europe is being pushed quite hard, but there are international differences, and in some countries you have to publish in order to get tenure, in the States for example. And also in some UK universities you have to publish and have a good track record in order to get promotion. So there's that tension between the structure in HE and other forces outside HE that are forcing you along. And then we also talked about journal equality and equity. Not all journals are the same. And the idea that, and again, in some UK institutions, PhD students need to, in order to get through the whole PhD process, publish 2 articles, and that's a requirement of the process of getting the PhD. So that, again, there's that tension going on. And then how do you get your credit for your ideas and prove originality? So John's point about using the repositories are an interesting one, because you could at least time and date stamp your idea at that point before you go to conference. But yeah, there was lots of questions really, and worries and concerns about sharing.
And although you've gone off at a tangent, but I think it's actually it's interesting, and it's interesting in light of the discussions that the group who also talks about sharing their research in a kind of more positive sort of potentially, or you did talk about, but I think it's maybe about different stages that people are at as well in the research sort of life cycle. Yeah, John, yeah.
I think it is a really interesting point about PhD publishing while we're doing the research. Now, other than the very small minority of PhDs per publication, I'm not aware of any doctoral regulations that specify that they've got to publish. It's usually that it's got to be a publishable standard. And it's really interesting that I think we've got a good track record here of our research students publishing during their PhDs. I was talking to some people at research intensives a couple of weeks back, and they were saying that actually they're now finding they're being pressurised by management in some cases to actually keep the powder dry and not to publish during the PhD, and to actually work up much more traditional style with a postdoc and get a higher level, better quality journal publication afterwards to try and make the most for the university's ref submission for the doctoral research. That's a really interesting one.
Yeah, so I say I've got a friend who works at a university, and they have to have 2 articles. So as you go into your 3rd year, if you're full time, you have to have 2 articles either published or in the process of.
Yeah.
Sorry? Somewhere in Leeds. But it might be one particular faculty, but she works on that faculty.
That's not a university matrix.
Yeah. And she was saying that's what their expectation is. Okay. It's in the engineering bit.
So we are lucky.
Shall we
say what journal are you talking about? That was what we were kind of...
Yeah, and that having a journal article, not all journal articles are equal, so no. Should we move to the back of the room? You talked about managing and organising, and I think you've got some really interesting experiences actually from this group about lots of tools that you're actually using at the moment that really means I can go.
I think we just got into listing the different platforms and the tools that we use as a place to start, and then we were breaking down the different ways that we use things. So some of us, I guess, are using all of these, maybe, but I think most of us are using one or two of these at least. So we talked about Evernote, Twitter, note-taking apps of different kinds, Google Docs, Dropbox, and Trello were the kind of key platforms. But within that, it was a mix of ways of sharing links and things easily, and of actually storing info. We talked about bookmarking techniques, and different, whether that's favorites on Twitter or likes on Guardian articles or whatever. And that Evernote can work for that sort of thing, but we wanted that need to be able to come back to something that we thought, that's interesting, I don't have time to read it now. We did raise some of the similar issues because of these, we were talking about these cloud resources and things about, we had a list of issues there about security and privacy, but also space was something, just a practical thing. Our inboxes are really small here. I don't know if you kind of want to complain about it. But so sending links from the Dropbox file rather than the file itself. Compatibility between these different things, because these are different companies, they're all proprietary. You often resort to having to like email yourself something from one thing in order to put it into the other thing. They don't work well together necessarily.
And I think you made a good point about that some of them, so we were talking about Evernote versus OneNote, and some of them do very similar things, but there might be that kind of killer feature of Evernote that you really like that kind of leads you to use that, you know, for certain things and not to use another.
Absolutely, like certain opening a file to annotate a notability, but you can't do that in OneNote. So it gets really messy. I don't know whether we had, and we talked about other media as well, so not just text things, things like, so using Flickr and Pinterest and SoundCloud to capture other sorts of things and share that stuff.
This is great. I think we'll take pictures of all of these and share them along with the slides that I've got today. Yeah. So that's. I think this is a particularly useful, kind of really about a lot of what I was about to kind of go through and highlight some of the tools I use. Can we hear from the last group as well now? And then we can maybe just have a kind of brief overview. What I plan to do because of time, because I thought what might happen is actually you really are much better talking to each other. You will have my slides, and the slides for any of these tools that you thought, well, what is that one? I don't know what that is. I've got a whole set of materials that kind of go through lots of the tools in more detail with links to them as well, so you can find out more. Yeah, Phil, did you want to say something on what your group were talking about? Because I think you've got a useful
Yeah, we did a similar conversation to that last group there, talking about different tools and stuff like that, and I know you can't see this from here, but we've got this little kind of diagram, with the V-type framework in the middle, and then kind of around the outside. It kind of follows a similar kind of process for using social media tools. So from the very start, knowledge and kind of that kind of stuff, using things like ZTalk, Google Scholar, the library, just go by tools to set up kind of keyword searches or general searches. But rather than do that and go out and do the research manually yourself, every few days or whatever, setting up RSS feeds, having them to come to you into a tool like Feedly or something like that, some kind of RSS reader. When these articles kind of arrive, what do you do with them? You kind of have a quick glance, are they any use? Do I want to read into it a bit more? You kind of, where do you then save it from there? You put it in your pocket. There's a tool called Pockets, just kind of store it to one side. As you, Monday to Friday going throughout your day job, and you find something that's really useful. I haven't got a chance to read it now, but I'll read it later. Put it in your pocket, the other tools are available, kind of thing. But, so from there, you go to review your Pocket account, you go through, think that's not very useful, I'll get rid of that, that one is really useful. I'll either save it or I'll send it maybe put it through Evernote or get the article and put it in my Dropbox account or something like that, wherever we want to save them to. At the same time, don't want to tweet about this. I found this really interesting article. Someone else might find it interesting as well, so I can put it up there on my Twitter, see if anybody else replies, anyone's found anything similar, kind of thing. So there's this idea of kind of then obviously tweeting about your research, asking questions, just putting thoughts out there, sharing information that you're finding that other people might find interesting. WordPress and Twitter kind of go hand in hand. They come up quite a lot throughout this diagram about being able to blog about your research, tweet about your research and that kind of thing. Video blogging, that kind of stuff. There are, the name escapes me now, but there's certainly a woman somewhere who's video blogging throughout her PhD journey. Just another way of kind of talking out loud about kind of the challenges she's facing. I know kind of Claire and Charlotte are quite kind of vocal like that on Twitter about, you know, procrastination or whatever else it might be, you know. It's a similar kind of thing. They just talk about your experience of going through that kind of journey. But, the second domain on this framework, I was kind of trying to whistle through this, personal effectiveness, using tools like Todoist, Wunderlist, Trello to create those kind of to-do lists and keep yourself organised. LinkedIn, ResearchGate, academia.edu, whatever it might be. Again, broadcasting, talking through Twitter and social media. You've got similar things on the next section. But then the domain D was around the engagement, influence and impact. So again, using social media tools like SlideShare to share conference presentations, watching things like TED and YouTube to get ideas and tips and pointers for preparing to present at a conference. You know, not everyone's got experience of doing that. Again, talking about it through social media, Twitter, blogging and that kind of stuff. So that was, we kind of talked through those tools and we came back around to things like storing documents when you find articles, put them in your Dropbox account or whatever else. You know, are there any copyright implications around that kind of thing? So.
Okay, will you be able to share that?
I can share this, yeah. It's not a lot of use, it's very visual, so it's not a lot of use without anyone kind of explaining it, but you might be able to make some sense of it. But,
Charlotte.
Look what was talking last year, it's actually, I find it's quite a good discipline, because if I just throw the articles into that,
yes,
stops me reading them and wasting time, and actually I find that most of them don't need to be read at the latest. It's that kind of, it just...
Does anyone else use Pocket at all? You can read offline as well, that's the advantage.
Which is using that. So when I was looking at PowerPoint with the kids after whatever activity, I can read an article, but I do find it just distances it. It may not be as useful as I probably thought in the first place. But
yeah, it's a tool I used to use quite a bit for the kind of just, as you say, shoving something in there and then thinking I'll go back to it, rather than just bookmarking, which then requires you having an internet connection and having to go through to get to the resource. But it is something that I have to say I was only thinking when I prepared this today, I've just totally got out of the habit of using it, and I'm not 100% sure really what I found that's really, you know, whether I'm just now I just haven't got time, you know, and it's sort of finding, you know, I think these tools have to fit with the way that you're working, and sometimes something like Pocket, you know, is great for some people. For me, I just am now finding I don't have the time to read all the stuff I put into it, so it would be a bit of a
That's just like PhDs used to be back in the 80s and 90s. You'd photocopy articles, put them in a box file, and you'd never bloody read them.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
We just there are a lot of tools on that list, and Karen raised the point about, you know, where do you find the time to do all this, or is it not? How does it impact on your efficiency and your ways of working? And the key is obviously to find the process that works for you, isn't it?
Definitely.
Charlotte obviously hit it off with Pocket and it's found that great, but if it's just one thing just like that improves your kind of workflow, if it's something like Feedly and RSS and that changes the way you do your lit searches and that kind of thing, you know.
Yeah.
Or whether it's Trello for managing your time, just if you find that one little nugget, that will, you know, make it easy to think about, oh, well, maybe there's something else I can look into or whatever else. It's not about using all of these tools. It's
No,
just
definitely not. Definitely not.
Otherwise.
What I'll just do, because I mean, I was kind of thinking of all the different social media and how it can help with these ways, but one of the things, and you can have a look at the tools that I use, but one of the things that I did put together, if you just bear with me, was a kind of Jane's top 10 toolkit. So these are slides that These are the slides. These are the tools that I was going to focus on in more detail, and you can have a look at them in the slides afterwards when you get them. Thinking about kind of what my absolute kind of key tool at the moment is, one of the things I'm trying to do is juggle doing a kind of full-time job and doing some research on the side and doing several research projects. And so my absolute go-to tool at the moment is Wunderlist. I know a lot of people like Trello. It's a very similar thing. It's kind of really for planning your time, for scheduling tasks, and kind of, for me, the big advantage of it is I can have it on my phone, I can look at it on my computer. It's got an app that I've got also on my iPad, and I can use it collaboratively. So people I'm working on projects with, I've encouraged lots of people to use Wunderlist as a way then of kind of being able to divide up work between us of what needs to be done. And hopefully it's making me a bit more effective in terms of not missing deadlines, kind of keeping projects on track. Just sort of feeling each day what it is I'm on. So I will review my Wunderlist at the start of a week and kind of have a look, how is my week panning out. Actually, I've scheduled myself to do about 12 things on Wednesday when I'm in a meeting all day, so that's not going to work, you know, unless I stay up till 2 o'clock in the morning. So what Wunderlist, I have to say, is my tool, and I tried Trello and I just didn't get on with Trello. I just didn't find it. It does the same thing though, and many people like Trello. Twitter, I have to say, I couldn't really live without Twitter for sort of just, I feel like for me, it's a little bit like I wake up in the morning and what's going on Twitter, what's the news? That is the place I go. I look at hashtags, I look at kind of just, you know, the people that I follow tweet about things I'm interested in. So it's just my kind of key way that I keep myself up to date. And I do use it quite professionally, I would say, so you won't find me generally tweeting pictures of my cats. So if you want to see pictures of my cats, you have to be my Facebook friend. Evernote, I was for a long time I'm not interested in Evernote, tried it, not got it working. Suddenly something clicked with me with Evernote. I think particularly it's around sharing notes. I was talking to Claire about that as well. So the ability to share notebooks or to share notes with other people, so I can put things into Evernote and it kind of notifies me of new material that other people I collaborate with have put into Evernote. So it's sort of a way of slightly reading somebody's mind if it's in Evernote, and then I can kind of see what's going on. But it's great when I'm at a conference as well, and I just feel like I'm getting much more organised, that I now have a conferences notebook where I keep all my notes, and the ability to search it I find really, really helpful. And just being able to put all kinds of content in there, not just notes, but photos and all sorts of things. I like WordPress a lot. That's another tool I use. So I've got several blogs that are kind of more like websites, but I just think WordPress is a really nice tool to create a simple website, but also to be able to blog. And so as a kind of way of documenting a project and work in progress, that's sort of how I got into blogging, and to just sort of reflect on what I'm doing. My personal blog, I have to say, I've got really bad. I'm just finding the time of actually writing blog posts there, but I still really, really think WordPress is a great tool because it's just so easy to use. And Dropbox and Google Drive for kind of storing my stuff, getting to it everywhere, working collaboratively, another great tool. Mendeley I'm using, but I'm you know, for kind of, I think it's got a lot of abilities, you know, to produce bibliographies, to find papers on topics, and to sort of store all the PDFs. That's a great tool. SlideShare, I put lots of presentations I do up on SlideShare. I like Flickr. I particularly like Flickr for searching for Creative Commons or openly licensed images that I might want to use in my slides. So some of the images I've actually got in here I'll just clip art, but a lot of the time when I do presentations, then Flickr's the place I go to find images that I can use, and some of the ones earlier on in this slides, you know, people's pictures that they share with the Creative Commons license on. And then I put LinkedIn there. I'm a bit of a kind of LinkedIn I think I've got a big network on LinkedIn, and I think if you're looking for a job, it's a good place also to connect with people that you're not necessarily wanting to be friends with, but you want to kind of keep in touch with them after a conference. So that's all the kind of tools that I would emphasise. I have got a few things, these slides now going to move on. Yeah, issues to consider, and I know John wanted me to mention about altmetrics as well, but I think that, you know, there is quite traditional ways that we are measured when we do research in terms of the outputs. Lots of people are talking about journal publications and how, you know, how you can sort of show the value of your research. But I think altmetrics and alternative measures of making impact are going to become increasingly important. And you know, the fact that you might not be publishing in an academic journal but having an impact in something that doesn't get picked up through regular citations, or the fact that, you know, you've got lots of followers on Twitter, you've got a lot of interest in your research out there in the sort of wider public, I think is going to become really much more key. So I think, do you do a session on altmetrics in this programme, John? Is that something?
We don't in this programme, but the library has subscribed to it.
I did one.
That's one session.
It was a couple of years back that I did it.
Okay.
It was first beginning to emerge.
Yeah.
Really.
But I think it's just it's something that this group kind of you touched on as well, about kind of protecting your ideas, because you don't necessarily want them out there somewhere where maybe you won't get the credit. I wonder if we might see that sort of change, and that the way we measure the value of research in the future will be on the wider impact it has, not just on the fact that you've got 3 published articles in this journal, but the way that you use social media and your kind of online identity. I do think, and obviously one of my roles at LSE, and you've got Ruth here, your copyright officer, that sharing and collaborating is great, but it is really easy now to forget about the kind of legal and the ethical issues around that. One of the things obviously is around sort of data that's out there on social media that can be very personal data about people. So if you're using that in your research, you need to be thinking about that. But I think copyright is the other one that is also really key, and, you know, be mindful about what it is that you're sharing when you're uploading, you know, content that you maybe have authored yourself, but you might have assigned the copyright somewhere else. So, you know, are you actually able to put that up on your own website? Are you, you know, are able to share that on Dropbox with a whole group of other researchers? You do need to think about those issues, because it is really, really easy to share now. Yeah.
We really don't want Brooks and John to become a test case for the copyright licensing agency targeted by that sugar.
No. So yeah, lots of things to think about. I did have some final discussions. We're not going to have time to do that, but I did also want to just show you, because I've got a slide somewhere. If I just see where it is, if you just bear with me. Just about this one. So we've got a couple of projects that we've had at LSE in the last couple of years about the possibilities. I mean, social media data, it's just big data, that's what people are talking about, but the possibilities of getting access to huge data sets through social media, getting access to huge numbers of people. I mean, is it something crazy like 15 billion people on Facebook? I don't know. I'm sort of making somebody told me the stats last week. It is a huge amount of people. So if you're looking to kind of gather public opinion, the benefits for using social media are kind of, you know, you've got the ability to reach huge numbers of people and do research with people all around the world. There's lots and lots of powerful visualization tools, but I think you have to consider, you know, how you get consent of people. If you're going into Facebook and kind of using that as a way of capturing data about people, you know, are they aware that you're there? Just 3 things you can have a look at later, but some research we did at LSE. So Reading the Riots was a project that was looking at the kind of civil unrest in London quite a few years ago, but it was looking at how it's portrayed in the traditional media versus social media, and there's quite a lot of interest at LSE in our Media and Communications department around the kind of how things are perceived in traditional media versus social media. Obviously, different types of people use those different types of media. So if you were just gathering opinion off Twitter, you know, who are the people that aren't connected, that their voice isn't represented? Crowdsourcing the UK Constitution was a project my department were involved in last year with our Institute of Public Affairs. They were looking to write a UK constitution on a platform that's called an ideation platform, where people could put forward ideas and vote them up of all the things that they wanted in a UK constitution. So you could follow that up, but it's just another interesting way that people are using the technology to kind of capture public opinion. And then similarly, a project that was done around the time of the 2010 general election, again comparing social media and the opinions that people were putting out on social media versus kind of more traditional ways of measuring public opinion. But it's a really interesting area, and I've got some links at the end if you're interested in following that up. I think the Association of Internet Researchers have got a lot about the ethics to think about if you use this for actually the data collection sort of process. So I'm gonna stop there, but I hope that I've covered enough that will be useful for you all. That's some reading that you can have a look at, as I say, afterwards. That's quite a useful social media toolkit that came out last year from USISA, but also I would recommend, if you haven't had a look at it, LSE's Impact blog is really useful for kind of the current debates around scholarly communication, open access, kind of using social media as alternatives or in complementary to traditional media. So have a look at that, and you can stay in touch with me afterwards. Follow me on Twitter or email me, and I'll put my blog up there, which has got other ways you can get hold of me. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Jane.
25 minutes overrun.
We have gone over time a little bit, but does anyone have any questions they'd like to raise just now for Jane, or you can tweet her your question afterwards?
I've got a question. I hope it's quite a quick one. But we're doing Open Education Resource Week. Now, there's some discussion about the different types of Creative Commons licenses you can choose for research. And you mentioned altmetric just now. And the question I've had in the past is whether limiting whether a resource can be remixed and reused will lower the impact it potentially has in the future. Did you have any thoughts about that?
Yeah, that's a really good point, actually, Ruth. I think, I mean, arguably, if you want to have the most impact, then the most permissive Creative Commons license is probably what you should go for. I don't have any idea of whether at the moment there is a measure that says if you put Creative Commons non-commercial, no derivatives license on there, that people would say, well, you've restricted it so it's less impact. I don't know whether it does do that. My feeling is that people do need to think quite carefully when they choose a Creative Commons license of what they are actually comfortable with other people doing with their content. And it is quite a personal thing in some ways. I know there's been a big push to say, put research out there, put it just as CC BY, so that all you get is, there's no restrictions on it. Because what is non-commercial, and does it stop somebody who's maybe wanting to use your research who works for a charity? That I've heard that, because they raise funds, so it's not, it can't be considered non-commercial. But I think you do have to just be quite mindful as well, because what if somebody was taking your content and selling it and making a profit, and you'd used a CC, just attribution license? You'd have no recourse on that. They could take your content, they could package it up, they could put it into a book, and they could sell it, and they would get the benefit. Obviously, you'd still get credit as in your name, but you wouldn't get anything else. So I just think I need to know more really about that, and it's something where I am all for open education, but I'm also, you know, I wouldn't like to see content that people put out for people to share being used by other people to make a profit.
Okay.
So, is that, yeah.
Yeah,
We can carry on that discussion later, because I think that's
really
interesting.
interesting. Okay. People getting comfortable with it as well, that's really important.
Yeah.
Thank you, Jane. Thank you everyone for attending.